And unfortunately, I lost my job right in March, kind of when COVID was kicking off. So when I was interviewing for new positions or just starting to apply for new positions, like literally within a week, that kind of all ended because, the city went into full lockdown. And that was really scary, being unemployed at the beginning of a pandemic. Yeah, that was definitely stressful. The only thing I could think to do was go around, apply to the grocery stores because that was the one place I knew would be hiring for sure.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode number 20 of the Emigrant podcast, where we share stories of people who left their country to chase a better life. I'm Daniel De Biasi, and in this episode I had the pleasure to chat with Laurie. She's Canadian, and because her grandfather is originally from the UK, she was able to move to London using the Ancestry visa, a permit that allows you to stay in the UK for 5 years. You can apply to this visa if one of your grandparents was born in the UK. She has previously lived and traveled in Australia and New Zealand, but when she moved back to Toronto, she felt like it wasn't her place, despite her love for her city. In our conversation, we talk about finding a job, a place to live, and making friends in the UK, which also can be applied for other countries. Before moving to my conversation with Laurie, consider subscribing to the show if you haven't done it already. It would be great if you give us a review on Apple Podcast and Podchaser. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Laurie. Hi Laurie, thanks for being on the show.
Hi Daniel, thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing good. It's evening here in London now. Just relaxing. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. So you said you're in London, but where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from Toronto, Ontario. And yeah, I'm currently living in London, United Kingdom at the moment.
Sweet. And what do you do in London?
Normally I work in events. I was an event planner back in Canada. That's what I do usually for a career. Due to COVID, at the moment, events are obviously not happening. So at the moment, I'm actually working at a local grocery store in a bakery. So a little bit of a transition from my normal career, but that's been my COVID job, I guess you could call it. And I also, during this time, have taken some courses online, and I'm looking at starting my own little business as a virtual assistant business. So doing online event planning and virtual assistant work.
Sweet. I'm gonna definitely going back to that point, to this topic later, and I'm gonna ask you a little bit more question about business and things related to visa status and everything.
Sure.
But let's start from the beginning. So why did you decide to leave Ontario, to leave Toronto, to move abroad? And at what age did you decide to leave?
I think it all goes back to, I've always kind of been one to move around quite a lot, which started in Canada for the most part. I moved away for school from Toronto to Ottawa. I spent summer working out west, actually near Vancouver in the mountains. And I just kind of fell in love with traveling in that sense. So when I was 25, I moved to London for the first time. It was only for a summer at that point, and it just instilled my love of travel even more. But I felt I needed to focus on my career at that point. So I came back to Toronto after that summer and spent a few years working in the city. And then when I was 30, I realized that I could do the working holiday visa for Australia. And I just figured, it was my last shot to do it, because once you're 31, at that point, now it's 35, but at the point it was right before you turn 31 was the last chance to do it. So I decided to take a chance, leave behind my secure job, and move to Australia to become a backpacker. It was the first time I've ever done anything like that. And to be honest, it was one of the best years of my life. I met amazing people, and it did amazing trips as well. Got to go to some places I never imagined, such as Bali, Fiji. I did a huge 2-month road trip around Australia, just camping, and saw almost all of the whole country. And then after that, I didn't want to go home yet. So I got another working holiday visa for New Zealand, and I moved there for 7 more months before returning back to Toronto for the year. And I just felt like something was missing in my life, going back to what I'd sort of left behind. Just travel just woke something up in me, and I just fell in love with it. So I decided to, go abroad once again. And I applied for the Ancestry visa because my grandfather was originally from the UK. So now I'm living in London on a 5-year visa.
So you say you got your visa for London because your grandfather was from the UK?
Yeah, so there's a thing called the Ancestry visa, which if you've had a grandparent, could be on your mom or dad's side, it just needs to be one grandparent. If they are originally from the UK and born here, then you're eligible for a 5-year Ancestry visa. And then actually after your 5 years, as long as you are in the country, I believe it's 180 days each year, then you can be eligible for indefinite leave to remain after.
Okay, because I heard other people in the podcast that were from the US, and if their ancestor or grandparents or whatever were from Italy, in that case, they could ask for a second citizenship, for a second passport.
I wasn't aware of that. I don't, you can't do that in the UK from what I know, unless maybe your parent was also born here, but neither of my parents were born here. It was just my grandfather on my dad's side.
Oh, well, that was pretty lucky.
Yeah, no, I thank my grandfather all the time for that. It's, it's definitely a gift and a privilege to be able to come over here, on a visa like that for 5 years, especially because a lot of people do come over to the UK on it's the working holiday scheme or the work scheme visa, which is 2 years. But, after that 2 years, there's no guarantee that unless they find someone to sponsor them or some other visa they can apply for, there's no guarantee to stay. So with the 5 year, knowing that I can stay longer after if I get indefinite leave to remain is, it really makes it worthwhile. Yeah.
And was that like a help having a visa that long for finding a job? Was actually helpful?
Yeah, I definitely found that. I found compared to Australia and New Zealand, I find London was a bit of a tougher market in terms of finding jobs, especially in my career field as an event planner. A lot of places do like to know that you don't need to be sponsored and that you can work for a bit longer term as well. That's just from my personal experience. Other people could have had better luck, but I just found in terms of employers and recruiters, they definitely were a lot more happy to see that I had a longer term visa.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I was asking that question, because I had the same situation here in Canada, because I only had the visa for 6 months. It was super hard for me to finding a job, because even though I was qualified, they were not willing to sponsor me. And also they didn't want to go down the rabbit hole to sponsorship, and they wanted somebody more stable. They wanted to, if I only have like a year visa, would it be much different? Mm-hmm. And 6 months was not enough for many company to moving forward and hire me. That's why I was asking that question.
Oh, definitely. I think, and then it kind of gets into more of the backpacker type jobs, right? Like temp positions or, definitely like small hospitality positions here and there.
Yeah, which is fine if you're like a backpacking, if you're planning to do that, just an experience abroad. But if you actually decided to have a more stable situation abroad in a new country, you want to have a more stable job and in your career. And that makes it a little bit harder if you only have 6 months or a year visa instead of 5, which is super rare.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a bit harder. Like I found in Australia on my 1 year visa, I was able to find work in my career field, but it was more contract positions. So I didn't actually try to get sponsored, but so I don't know what that would have been like. I know people do manage to get sponsored, but I think it can be a little bit tricky. You almost get lucky if you're there on a shorter term visa.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're planning to stay in London?
At the moment, yeah, I'm definitely planning to stay in the UK at the moment. I really love London. It's such a fantastic city. There's so much opportunity here. The weather's a little bit warmer than Canada. I do prefer the winters here to Toronto, but it does rain a little more here. But yeah, it's such a great city. There's so much to see and do here. Travel is so easily to the rest of Europe from the city here, and flights are so cheap to the rest of Europe. And it's such a multicultural city as well, which I really, really love. Whether I'll stay here long term in the city, I'm not so sure yet. But at the moment, I do plan to stay here.
Yeah, because it's not a cheap city to live in.
No, it's definitely not the cheapest of cities to live in. But I'm from Toronto, so it's in some ways I actually find it quite similar and on par. For instance, rent is maybe a bit more expensive here, but food is more affordable. So. Or going out, I find is about the same. So it kind of balances out. Where travel or transport here for the tube and whatnot is definitely pricier than Toronto. But I find it kind of balances out. And, I kind of look at it as you're living in the city. So you're sort of paying for the quality of life that you get here as well. Where I find the quality of life in London is really, really good. Like you can go to any restaurant. There's, so many theater shows and whatnot to choose from, amazing concerts. This is all, not during COVID, of course, but looking forward to when those days are happening once again. But yeah, there's no shortage of things to do and people to meet and job opportunities as well. Yeah,
no, totally. I agree. I've never been to Toronto, but being like living in Vancouver, I definitely missed the subway system of London, or like Europe for that matter. Just so much easier to move around London. You don't need a cab. I've been to London a few times. I never got into a cab or a bus. With the subway, you can just move anywhere you want.
Yeah, it's definitely very sophisticated in that sense of how far around you can get. I don't think Toronto's necessarily known for their subway system. It is an amazing city. I love Toronto so much, and I do miss it. And yeah, the music scene there is unreal. Same with the food and things to do. And, it's a major sports hub as well. But yeah, in terms of their transport system, it's not the greatest. They can improve on that.
And do you have any regrets about leaving Canada, leaving Toronto?
No, I don't ever regret anything that I do in life. I try not to in that sense. But I wouldn't say I have any regrets on leaving, because I find that it creates so much more excitement in life in a sense. There's always a bit of unknown about living abroad, and adventure that kind of comes into life, even on when days feel the same, because you're still out of your comfort zone. And I definitely love having that thrill in my life. The one thing I do miss very much, I would say, is when I went to Australia and New Zealand, I didn't go back to Canada for 18 months because of the distance and the cost of flights and all that. And, when you're away from family and friends for that long time, so much time goes by, but you almost don't realize it. When you're away, I find you kind of think that you're in your mind, it's like time is frozen. But when you do go back, you do realize how much time has passed, and you see friends and family, and some people have gone older, or nieces and nephews, for instance. I have a niece and nephew, and they definitely grew. Well, I didn't have a nephew at that point, but my niece grew up so quick, and I didn't like being away for that long. So actually, when I was deciding to come to London, I thought, it's so much closer to Toronto. It's only a 7-hour flight. It's a lot more affordable. So I was definitely planning to come back, once, twice a year. And family can come out to Europe as well, because my mom is actually retiring shortly. So, the plan was for her to come out and visit. But now with COVID happening, unfortunately, that's put a stall on when I can go back, because currently there is a quarantine for 2 weeks for people coming to Canada from the UK, and then coming back to the UK from Canada. There's another 2-week quarantine, where I just can't afford to take a month to quarantine, for like a 2-week trip to see family and friends. So I was actually supposed to be back in Canada about 2 weeks ago for my niece's birthday and a friend's wedding, which, I missed. And my nephew now, he was 8 months when I left, and he'll be 2 in November. So it's just when you see the things that you're missing in that sense, that is something that I find a bit hard to deal with living abroad. But luckily with FaceTime, and the technology that we have nowadays, it really makes it feel a little bit closer, right? Than, maybe the days where people were writing just snail mail to each other.
Yeah. It's such an advantage, like being in this era. Just as you said, like a FaceTiming. I mean, you said you left and your nephew was eight months old.
Yeah, he was 8 months old, and he'll be 2 at the end of November. So when I think about that and how much he's grown, and he's looking like a little man now. So it's those little moments that I wish I could be there for. I think that's the hard part about being abroad.
Yeah.
But, I still don't regret my decision of coming here, because it's definitely enhanced my life in so many ways as well.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Have you seen your nephew since you left?
Just on FaceTime. Yeah, okay. Just on FaceTime. But no, I haven't. Since I've left, I moved to London in August 2019. So I've been away 13 months now. But no, I haven't seen any family or friends from back home since then. Yeah,
it will be interesting the first time you see your nephew. Because I remember when I saw my niece for the first time, actually when she saw me for the first time, because I left, she was a month old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I saw her, she was just over a year or something like that. And I was amazed that she recognized me. She always saw me on FaceTime, like an iPad. And when she saw me for the first time, like in real life, she recognized me right away. She ran into my arms. It was a beautiful moment, and I was shocked that she recognized me. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. See, that's social media has its pros and cons, but that's definitely a pro. That with that technology, they can recognize you that way. I'm sure that was just such a cool experience. I'm hoping that my nephew does recognize me. I FaceTimed with him the other day, and he was waving at me and, saying hello. So yeah, it'll definitely be a good experience. My niece is 8 now, so she definitely, we chat quite often. So it'll be great to see her when I actually can as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially because like they're so young, so they're growing up knowing that their uncle or auntie is it's on the other side of the world. It just becomes normal that they only see you on FaceTime and they only see once a year, and then once you're there, it's just it's an amazing experience for both of us, for us, exactly. And for them.
Well, the thing I look forward to is once my niece is old enough, and my nephew as well, hopefully, I would just love for them to come out, to come visit London and, have that experience, or I can take my niece maybe to Paris and, when she's a bit older, like 14 or so or 16, and take her to Paris for a weekend and go shopping or, visit. I just think that would be such an amazing experience for them as well. So I look forward to that day when it can happen.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, same. I can't wait for my nephew, which is the oldest, to come and visit me. And going back, you said you've been in London for like 13 months, just over a year.
Yeah.
You celebrate a year not long ago.
Yeah, I did.
And I saw on your social media that when you left Toronto to move to the UK, you had like a list of questions. So you have a few questions before moving abroad. And so it's like, will I find a good place to live? Or will I find a decent job? And will I get lonely?
Yes.
All these kind of questions. So how was your experience when you moved abroad, when you moved to London? Did you manage to find a job, and was it easy to find a job? And did you feel lonely? How was the experience with people from London?
To be honest, London was a bit of a rough go in the beginning. I knew London, in a sense, was going to be a bit tougher than, for instance, like Australia, where I found it a lot easier to find a job and kind of get settled right away. But yeah, London was a bit of a tough go. So when I first came out here, I was living in a hostel actually for about 2.5 months, which was quite difficult in some senses. You don't have any personal space, but it's also a really neat experience because you do meet some really, really cool people as well. In terms of finding a job, yeah, it took me about a month to find a job in my career field. I mean, I think if I had just kind of taken, any sort of job, it would have been a little bit easier. But I was really focused on trying to find a job in events planning. So it took me about a month to land a job, which in terms of UK time, that's actually really not that bad. And yeah, I was really happy with like the salary that I was offered, and the job seemed really good. It was a bit more of an step up in my career, an assistant manager position, which was amazing. But unfortunately, it actually took me, I got hired offered the job at the end of September. I didn't actually start the job till the beginning of December because they have to it was for a finance company, and they had to do all these background checks and police record checks. And because I lived in Australia, New Zealand, and then Canada in the time that they were looking for, they had to get all the background checks from those countries. And at the time, the wildfires were happening in Australia, like the really bad wildfires that were recently there. And that delayed my checks so much. And the checks from New Zealand as well were delayed, I think because their office is in Australia. So that delayed the whole process. So yeah, it took about 2 months for those checks to go through. So that was a very stressful time because I was waiting to start work. I was burning through my savings that I had saved to move over to London, which, if you're aware, the Canadian dollar doesn't go very far when you come to the UK. So yeah, that was quite a stressful time. So I didn't know if I still had the job, if I should get a part-time job, or what was kind of going on. And the UK is a bit difficult in some senses because if you want to get a place or get a house or a place to live, they need to have proof that you're working, and you need to, go through a rental agency and get background checks and that done as well. And a lot of places won't take you if you don't have a job. And, in order to open a bank account, you need a job. So it's all connected. So it was a bit of a rough start, but luckily I got the job offer. So that was enough to help get me a place to live, more to get out of the hostel. And yeah, eventually I did start that role, which was a very, very satisfying day when I got the call that all the checks had come through. So yeah, once that was all set, the first 3 months were quite difficult in that sense. But, at the same time, you just got to mentally prepare yourself for those ups and downs of moving abroad. Like, you have to think you're literally uprooting your entire life and, moving to a new country. It's not just, if you have the backpacker mindset, which I didn't have this time around because I knew I was coming here more to settle versus when I went to Australia, I was kind of, more free-spirited, and I was just happy for any adventure that kind of came along at that point. Where here I knew that I wanted to find a good house that I was going to be comfortable in, and I wanted to get a good job and, just get that settled right away. In terms of feeling lonely, yes and no, because I was surrounded by people quite often, and I'm a pretty outgoing people person. But I think from living abroad and traveling quite a lot, I'm very fine on my own as well. So I did have some moments where I was lonely, just when times felt stressful. You just missed having those close people that were familiar and close around you nearby to kind of just be around. But I did meet some amazing people that became, friends quite quickly. And I moved into a really good house share and had support in that way. So in terms of feeling lonely, I wouldn't say too much. I got pretty lucky in that sense.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes it's hard to make friends or to find people on the same age that, I don't know. It's not like growing up in the place where you were born, that you go through different stages in life with your friends, like going to school and everything. So you go through those stages, and your friends that you meet from school, they become your longtime friends. When you move abroad and you're like an older age, it's harder to find those friends because you don't have those experiences. So it's harder to find like a good friendship, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It is a bit harder as you get older, especially when people are, I think in London it's a lot easier just because there are so many, people who are from other countries or other cities that are living here. It's so multicultural, and there's so many people in the same position as you are if you've just moved here. And one thing that I found is amazing, and I definitely recommend people do if they are, moving to another country or another city, especially London, is just look at Facebook groups and meetup groups. And that's what I did. I ended up finding some one was a travel meetup group. So, it's like-minded people who also love travel, and they would host meetups. And one of my closest friends here now, actually, she's from Australia, but we met through one of these travel groups. And then, there's a Canadians in London group, which I'm sure a lot of cities have that. There's also Australians in London, or there's Australians in Toronto. Just look on Facebook groups and just kind of connect with people, even on social media in general, Instagram, you can connect with people in that way. So I found, even in lockdown, there's a group called London New Girl, which I'm a part of on Facebook. And, there's over 10,000 members who are women on there, who so many of them are always posting, looking to meet friends. I live in this area, I like to go to the pub, or I like live music, I like yoga. They just post interest, and, they'll post their age, and so many people commented on it. And I did that during lockdown as well. It was around June, and I just wanted to meet some people in the area who, there's a really nice space where you can go walking in the woods nearby. And I just wanted to meet some people to do social distance walks because, after lockdown, you start craving some interaction with people. So yeah, I ended up meeting a couple of girls, and we formed a little walking group. And, I just think just getting out there and putting yourself out there is definitely important in that sense, because then it helps not feeling so isolated and lonely.
Yeah, no, totally. Because the other thing, I met really good people. I had a really good friend, they're still friends of mine. But through living together, we're sharing a flat. And most of my friends that I met, they're still my friends. They're my roommates. How's finding a house in London? Is it easy to find good roommates and good houses?
It can be quite difficult, I think, from what I've heard. I got lucky in that sense. So I live in a really good house share. I actually live in the Wimbledon area in London. So London's very spread out in terms of different suburbs in that sense. So I found my place through a friend of a friend. And yeah, it was the first place I actually came to look at. And it just worked out perfectly. So yeah, I've been here the whole time. But I know there's different sites. Like one is SpareRoom that people use quite a lot. And there's different Facebook groups as well that you can find rooms at. But I think sometimes it can be quite difficult. There's a lot of people who end up getting ripped off. Landlords can be kind of shady. You got to be careful, I think, sometimes in London for looking for places, and just have your wits about you, because I have heard quite a few stories of people trying to get ripped off, or they'll post pictures and it's not the actual place. It looks completely awful when they get there, and it looks amazing on what they post online. And I've heard stories of people asking for money up front before you even come and see the place. So, I like to think that there's more good people out there than, those that will do that to someone. But unfortunately, in bigger cities, I think that can tend to happen. So.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because when I was looking for a place here in Vancouver, I found Vancouver is not a cheap place to rent. Mm-hmm. And I could find some ads of like a beautiful houses, like a brand new houses for like a super cheap, like a less than $1,000 for per month in a beautiful house. It would feel like a super dodgy at the beginning. Even then, they were asking me money up front to secure the place. I was like, oh, if you're interested, you have to send me the money to log. I mean, you need to be kind of like a smart. You know, if it's like it's a super nice house and the price is not fair, it's a scam, and definitely don't give money in advance there for sure. And what did you use for finding a place in London? This like a website or just Facebook?
Yeah, SpareRoom is, I think, the main. Well, there's GumTree, which is sort of in Canada you have the Kijiji or the Craigslist. GumTree is the similar thing here, but there's also SpareRoom, which is really good. But so I was looking mainly on that to begin with, but this place that I found now that I'm living in. It was, like I said, a friend of a friend. So they told me about the room and then I came to see it. So because the one person was friends with my current housemate here, you know, they're also, I think, more inclined to take someone who knows someone through someone versus just, you know, a random person from the internet in a sense. But yeah, we just got on really well and it worked out well.
Sweet. And going back to your job, did you try to find a job before you moved to the UK, before you left Canada?
I did, yeah. I did spend quite a lot of time searching for a job before coming out here. Unfortunately, I didn't have any luck in trying to secure a job before. And I think, I don't know for sure if this is the case, but I think sometimes recruiters are a bit apprehensive to, you know, take on people if they're not actually in the country yet. Or I think I had a call with one recruiter just in general to get a feel for, you know, what my skills were and what I was looking for. But in terms of job hunting, I didn't have any luck before coming out here. But once I was here and you can put, you know, an address, like a UK address on your CV. I mean, I just put the hostel address that I was staying at when I first got here. And then I got a lot more traction than I had when I was in Canada. And also I think because I didn't have a UK phone number when I was in Canada. I don't know if it's the whole UK in general, but in London, you go through a lot of recruiters before to find a job. So most of the job postings, it will be a recruiter posting the job posting, and then they'll help you kind of find a job that way. So I don't think I think they're more inclined to talk with you over the phone than on email. So if you don't have a UK phone number before, I think that can, you know, cause a bit of issue sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a different way to, if you actually want to have a UK number. If you're not in the UK, I think you can have just an internet phone number. I have an Italian phone number. I have a New Zealand phone number in case I need to call somebody in Italy or on New Zealand. So it's easy to get a VoIP, which is like a internet number.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
But yes, you're right. It's hard sometimes because people want to know that you are in the country to take you seriously. I don't know London, but many countries, they have so many applicants that it's easy for them to find somebody to do the job, right? Oh,
absolutely. And I think just in general with the recruiters, when I was interviewing with some of them or speaking with them, you know, they were like, okay, well, when can you come in and meet with us and, you know, get set up and register with the recruiting company? So I went in, you know, within a few days. So not saying that you can't get a job from abroad. I do have a friend who is Canadian as well, but she has a British passport and she landed a job while still in Canada before coming over here. So I don't know if maybe having a passport makes a bit of a difference versus a visa. But I think it can definitely be done. I just personally found that it was a lot easier once you're actually here.
Yeah, no, totally. And you went through agency or did you apply for LinkedIn?
I would use quite a few different sites. So Indeed is a big one over here, I think that's pretty worldwide for the most part. I was applying on LinkedIn, Indeed. There's also read.co.uk, which is out here. And there's so many other just recruiters and agencies that are here in the city that you can register with. But yeah, I find Indeed is probably one of my favorite ones in terms of looking for jobs, and Read is pretty good as well.
And what's the requirements to work in the UK? Do you need a similar social insurance number?
Yeah, so over here they have your NI number. So I actually had an NI number still from when I lived here and spent a summer here in 2011. So it's very similar to a social insurance number. It's just your NI number, which you do need in order to work out here.
Was there any particular obstacles or a particular challenge that you had to face when you moved to London?
Well, I would say like definitely the beginning stages, how I mentioned, like it taking quite a while for my job to start and finding a place to live in that sense. And just, I guess kind of living here 3 months without working in London, this being quite an expensive city, and, just kind of seeing your savings kind of burn away in that sense. It can be a bit stressful. And then I would definitely say, obviously, COVID has been quite a struggle living abroad. I did have family and friends that were just asking, like, are you going to come home for this? Are you coming back? And I just was like, well, no, because I moved here, like I moved here, like in terms of, like I'm in my 30s now, and I just, this is where I'm trying to set up my life now. So, being out here kind of solo, it makes it a bit more difficult, but like I said, I've been lucky, and I've got some great friends that I've met out here who've been almost like a little family while I was away. And unfortunately, I lost my job right in March, kind of when COVID was kicking off. So when I was interviewing for new positions or just starting to apply for new positions, like literally within a week, that kind of all ended because, the city went into full lockdown. And that was really scary, being unemployed at the beginning of a pandemic. Yeah, that was definitely stressful. The only thing I could think to do was go around, apply to the grocery stores, because that was the one place I knew would be hiring for sure. And I got lucky and I found a job in a bakery, which is a 5-minute walk from my house. And I work Monday to Friday, which is really amazing. What do you think about that? That's gotten me through this time, which has been, a godsend in some ways. So I'm looking forward to getting back into my career field hopefully soon, once things kind of, get back to normal a bit. But those times were definitely stressful. And I did actually end up getting COVID in March as well, right before starting that job. So being out here, getting COVID and dealing with that was definitely stressful and an obstacle as well, I guess.
Yeah, I bet. So you actually got the COVID? Yeah,
I got it at the end of March.
Was it bad?
It wasn't great. It was definitely, I didn't go to the hospital or anything, but, I definitely had it for a good full 9 days, where it was a good 4 or 5 days where I couldn't really get out of bed. Definitely had really bad pain all over my body. Any kind of noise, the headache was so bad, it kind of felt like a jackhammer in your head. My whole body hurt really, really bad. Just even getting up to go to the washroom was, very painful. And really bad fever, aches and pains. I didn't have a cough though, but one thing I noticed afterward, for like quite a while afterward, is I had like a weird sense of like lucid feeling. Like, I wouldn't call it vertigo, but you just almost felt like you were kind of out of your body in a sense. Like, when you're just really not quite delirious, but I don't know how to describe it quite that way. But I just felt like almost like out of it for a really long time, and I just felt really out of breath. So that was like a bit of a longer effect from it. But in terms of it being as bad as some other people have had it, I was lucky in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was asking you, because sometimes people can have COVID and don't feel it at all. Some people, they have like a really mild, and some people they're really bad. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't a severe one compared to what some other people have had, but I wouldn't say it was mild.
During this period, like when you lost your job and you were looking for a job and quarantine and everything, have you ever thought to move back to Canada?
No. It crossed my mind, but I just didn't see what the point was in a sense, other than being close to family and friends, which is still very, very important. But I think because what I was experiencing here, I'd probably be experiencing the same thing back in Canada. Like I gave up my apartment in Toronto. I didn't have a place to live. So I would have had to move back to my parents' house probably for a while. So, that would be definitely something to adjust to. And I'd have to start from scratch again as well. I'd have to find another job, decide if I wanted to move back to the city, because my family lives an hour outside of Toronto. So, I'd have to get set up all over again, where here I was already set up, and then I didn't know when I'd be able to come back out to the UK again, because I knew, I came out here with the intention to start a life out here. So no, in that sense, for me, it wasn't an option. Like I was very dead set on, I'm going to do what I can to make sure I can stay out here.
And do you feel lucky to be an immigrant, to have left your own country?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, Canada is one of the best countries to come from. I don't doubt that. And I feel very proud to be from Canada. And, there's so much about Canada I do love and I do miss. But I just think that having the ability to go and live abroad somewhere else and experience, like, the world is huge, there's so many different cultures and so much to see in the world. So just to stay in one's spot your whole life when you have the ability to, go and live abroad somewhere, people should take advantage of that if they can. And I know it's scary in so many ways, but, the payoffs for it, I think, are much outweigh the fears that can come along with it. So yeah, I definitely feel so lucky to be able to come out here and do that. And the thing I always tell myself, because it is scary I've lived abroad a few times, but each time before going, I always get that, cold feet or that anxiety of moving abroad. But, I just kind of tell myself, like, Canada's always there. So anytime it doesn't work out, or if I want to go back, it doesn't mean I failed. It just means, maybe I tried and maybe it wasn't the right choice. So I can always go back home. It'll always be there. But, that opportunity to move abroad, if it's there for you, take it, because it might not always be there.
Totally. What was your biggest fear when you decided to live?
Moving to Australia, I was definitely afraid of the spiders out there, I can tell you that. But turns out they weren't as bad as I thought they were going to be. I don't know. Australia, I didn't really have so much fears from what I can remember. Maybe that it wasn't going to work out, but I just was so excited to go because I just felt so much adventure before going, and it really was an adventurous year in that sense. Like, it was just, I like I said, I was doing some roles that were events planning related, but I also was traveling like a backpacker and kind of like living like I was 20 again throughout the time, but it was so much fun. But yeah, my fears before coming out to London, like I said, was just, I knew it was going to be a bit more difficult than I had in Australia to find a job and get set up, and it was going to take more time and just planning it all out. And I think because I worked so hard the year before, like saving, Toronto, like I said, it's an expensive city as is. So really restricting my social life in some ways and, putting everything into saving money and getting all my documents in order. And it was a big year of planning to come out here. So having that fear of it not working out after all that was definitely scary to think about. But, I think if you do focus too much on that, then the chances of it not working out are higher. Where if you just keep telling yourself that it's going to work out and have that faith that it will, it makes it a lot more smooth sailing.
Yeah. Even that, as you say, if things don't work out, you can just go back. You don't see it as a failure. That kind of mentality is actually pretty good, because I think I thought about it. Like, if I go back to Italy, I kind of feel like a failure. So I don't want to go back to Italy and prove that I couldn't do it abroad. And I even, many of my friends told me, Daniel, if the thing don't work out when you're abroad, don't feel like you're a failure if you're coming back. But I think in the back of my mind, I thought that was kind of like a failure if I can't make it in another country.
Yeah, I can definitely get how people would think that way. And I have thought that way before, but I just kind of changed my mindset to think, that it's not necessarily a failure. Because I think, if you really think about it in some ways, what's more of a failure is actually not, if you wanted to do it and then you didn't out of fear, I think then that to me would feel a bit more like failure than actually taking the chance and doing it and then it not working out. Because to be honest, moving abroad isn't for everyone, and there's nothing wrong with that. If someone tries it because they want to, and they prefer being home and having that comfort of home and things they know, then, if that's what's best for you, that's what's best for you. And that's great. But if you are staying behind and you feel like something's missing and, you have that desire to travel, but you're just too afraid to, and you don't take that chance, then, I think that's something a lot of people would regret not doing.
Yeah, totally. As you said, it's not for everybody. Some people are just not interested.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of the only one in my family that's really gone and moved abroad, where, other parts of my family or people in my family might not be interested to do that. So, it's just, like I said, it's just not for everyone. And some people it's for.
Did you have a different kind of a mindset when you left for Australia, when you left for London? Was it some kind of a way of thinking to moving abroad, or?
I think when I left for Australia, it was a little bit different because I was even though I was working in a job that was related to my career in the city, on the outside, everything looked good. Do you know what I mean? But I wasn't happy. I was kind of miserable in my job. I was just in Toronto, kind of questioning. And I think also, you turn 30 and you sort of start asking these questions to yourself. I was like, am I happy? What am I doing out here? I'm just working this job. I'm not enjoying it. Like, I want to experience something else. Like, is this what, the next 10 years is going to look like, per se? And yeah, I was just like, I just wanted an adventure. Like, I just want to feel like I'm living more, where my life just felt very predictable. So yeah, I just took that chance and was like, Australia, I'm going to go. And yeah, that was a bit of a different mindset because I was just feeling a little more adventurous and kind of, I don't know, in a more, like I said, more of a backpacker mentality in that sense. And then coming to London, my mindset was a little bit different. Like, I still had all these, ambitions to travel as much as possible. That's the main reason I moved out here. But my mindset was more, okay, like London's perfect because I can actually stay longer and make it more of a, someplace to settle and still work in my job and be able to travel at the same time, like sort of have both.
Yeah. And another question, if you didn't have the option of like this 5 years long visa, would have you gone somewhere else, or you would just go to London anyway?
Yeah, definitely. So before deciding fully on London, I was kind of it was a tough decision between going back to Australia or picking the UK, because in Australia, the only visa I would have been able to get would have been a student visa. And just, like I said, being in my 30s, I just thought I could do it. There's no guarantee that it would work out long term. It would be more or less, I would have just done that visa to get into the country and hopefully be able to find sponsorship down the way and have trust in the universe that it would align that for me. Because I loved Australia. I fell in love with it so much. It's such an amazing place. So if anyone's listening and they want to go to Australia, I highly recommend it. But it just didn't seem smart in that sense. Like, it was a bit too risky. There's too much up in the air just to, spend all that money on moving abroad again and taking that risk. Whereas London just felt longer term for the investment to the visa, just having the 5 years. And also I hadn't really traveled Europe that much before. I think I'd only been to London and then Dublin, actually. So just knowing that, Europe's at your doorstep and you can do weekend trips so easily, that was definitely more of a selling point for me. And it's closer, like I said, it's closer to Canada. So, and that's a direct flight for 7 hours. So it's a lot easier to go home to visit on normal circumstances.
Yeah, no, I mean, London is a great hub in Europe. Even for me to fly from Vancouver to Italy, I have to go through London most of the time. And so it works perfectly. London is super cheap to fly all over Europe. And Europe, I realize, is so much cheaper in many ways.
It really is. Like, I went to Rome in March, right before the country locked down, actually. I had a weekend in Rome and it was amazing. But yeah, the flights were incredibly cheap and super quick. I think it's only a 2-hour flight or 2.5-hour flight. It just took a 3-day weekend and got to see so much of Rome in 2.5 days. It was amazing. Yeah,
they can do that anywhere in Europe. I've been traveling like around Europe. Even just for a day, I was going there in the morning, come back in the evening because it was cheaper. Didn't have to pay for the hotel, which is so much cheaper. Like a flight was like 20 euros. You could just fly anywhere in Europe.
Yeah, and like that's amazing. Even when you think about it in Canadian dollars, like it's still so incredibly affordable when, the costs of flying in Canada is a little bit outrageous, to say the least.
Probably the cab to go to the airport is more than $20.
Yeah, like I think actually to fly from Toronto to Vancouver is probably the same price to fly to London in Toronto. So it's crazy when you think about it in that sense. And bonus of actually being in Rome right kind of while the pandemic was sort of kicking off, we went and saw the Vatican with no lines, got to see the Colosseum, no lines. So that was pretty amazing to experience that.
Sweet. Yeah, definitely, because Rome can be pretty busy.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. And knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I think what I would have done differently is maybe I'm saved up more money to begin with, because you never know sort of what mishaps will come along the way. So I didn't plan to not be working for the first 3 months. So yeah, just because London can be quite expensive to get set up in terms of if you are going to be renting in a house share or in your own place, you do need to pay a deposit. So if you think about first month and last month's rent in pounds, say you're coming from Canada, that's, it's almost double the price. So that's a huge chunk of your savings that you're going to be putting up right away. Just the cost of food, in general, getting set up, those things can happen. So I definitely would say just, save as much money as possible before coming over. So I think I would have definitely, if I had more time, I was just so anxious to get out here, to be honest. I was so excited to come. I didn't have a set deadline I needed to come out here, but I came out 3 months earlier than originally planned. So maybe had I done it again, I probably would have, worked for a little bit longer in Toronto and then come out here. But I don't regret any of it because I think everything kind of happens for a reason. And, the timeline just worked out.
Yeah. And going back to what you said at the beginning, that you are now thinking or you're working towards starting your own business. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're allowed to do on your visa? You need to change your status? How does that work?
Yeah, no, on my visa, the only restrictions on my visa I'm not allowed to accept public funding. So I can't get if I'm unemployed, I can't get government funding or anything like that. But no, in terms of starting my own business, I just registered as a sole proprietor with HMRC. You can also register as a limited company. So I started it in terms to be like a freelancer. So yeah, just throughout lockdown, I decided to try to make the most of it. So I purchased some courses on starting a business, and it's always been a dream of mine to work remotely as a travel lover. Then you can kind of be in one spot and travel, you don't have to be in one spot and you can be traveling around and, still working online. And I've always wanted to own my own business as well. So, just especially with COVID, the landscape of working is changing so much that people are proving and seeing that people can work online. And a lot of companies are shifting to be that way. So yeah, I just took some courses on just a bit of digital marketing and, starting your own business and enhancing those skills as well. And being an events planner, events are going online. That's sort of where the shift is happening now. So those are just skills that I'm hoping to offer as well. So it's very early stages, but it's kind of where I want to see happening or taking my career in the future.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the COVID is changing so much of our lives, the way we work, the way we behave, the way we socialize. That's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen a year from now, after everything will be over, to see if people are happy to work from home and companies are starting shutting down the offices because people don't want to go to the office, or people are sick to be home with the kids or just being home. They want to have another place to go. I want to go to the office. I see other people, I'll be in a different environment. So it'll be interesting to see, but definitely there will be more opportunity to work online, to work remotely, from anywhere you want in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll definitely be interesting because I've heard so many different sides of it. I've heard people miss going to the office and miss that socializing factor. I've heard other people love it. But, I think in some ways it's like a positive thing for the economy as well, because some places where the economy is suffering, if people are able to travel and go spend their money there, and it's like a stronger currency, then it's going to help put money back in tourism, back into the economies in that sense. And yeah, it just creates a really nice work-life balance, I think, for a lot of people who do love to travel and, be like where you can still be earning money while traveling, as well as, just having that flexibility and just even working from home. Like if you think about London, for instance, any big city, that commute is just, not a pleasant way to start your day. Sometimes being on the tube just crowded with people and, you feel like you're being herded like sheep in the underground, to get to work and then have to do the same thing coming home, and you're not getting home till 8:00 at night. Where if you're home and, you can have that time to go to the gym in the morning or wake up a bit later and, you don't have to put on a suit and you can take your kids to daycare or do your laundry on your lunch break or groceries, whatever it is you need to do while you're at home. And I find some people tend to work more while they're at home because they're, it's there, or their days are just more flexible. And I just think it creates a much nicer work-life balance.
Yeah, even people that don't want to live in the city and they have to commute for hours to get into the city, either because they don't want to live to the city or because they can't afford to live in the city, now they can live anywhere. So even from under that aspect, it would be interesting to see the price of renting or buy houses in the big city, because probably people rather live in the countryside in the UK instead of living in London with traffic and
pollution.
Yeah, just maybe rather people to be closer to the ocean or in the middle of the countryside, and that would change the price of the houses.
Absolutely. And like, because, well, London to buy is absolutely, that's outrageous in some ways, So it's true. If people can, live in the country and then still have the jobs in London, then that's kind of living the dream for some, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I know that London is expensive because I have a friend from London and he introduced him to some of his friends. They live on a boat on the river. That
is amazing. I would love to do that.
It's a really cool way to live in the city, like a cheap way to live in the city, but at the same time it's like camping all year long. It's like living in a tent pretty much, because it's the same kind of lifestyle you will have in a tent, because you have to empty it, the toilet tank, you have to empty it, you have to keep moving the boat, you have to take the garbage out, but they don't collect the garbage, so you have to go finding a garbage bin where you can empty your garbage. Like even having a shower, you have to fill up the tank to have a shower. There's all these kind of things. It's like living in a tent in a campsite, but it's a cool way. I mean, you live right in the city.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never lived on a houseboat. I would love to do that at one point in my life. Maybe not permanently, but just for the experience, I think it would be amazing. Just the same as I would love to live in a van temporarily at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else you would like to add that we didn't discuss?
Just in general, if anyone's thinking about moving abroad, like I just absolutely recommend it. I just think do your research ahead of time, kind of figure out what kind of country you want to live in. Can you work there? What sort of job are you looking for? Just, how much money do you need to move there to be, financially stable and not run into issues, and just do it. I think I'm a huge supporter of like taking that risk and, moving abroad. It's such an amazing experience that I don't regret any of it. And I think people should definitely do it if that's something they're thinking about. Totally. I agree 100%. You said about figure out how much it costs to live in that country. Do you have any website or research that you check out to see how much it costs living in London or something? What was I doing? I was just Googling, to be honest, and I found people's blogs as well, just kind of to get a rough idea of what the cost of living would be. Like I said, London New Girl was a good one that I used as well. Just doing research. Blogs I find are great to read up on versus just looking at random websites, because it's getting people's firsthand experiences, people who've actually lived there and they're writing it with the intent of trying to help others, versus just like a basic website. I think just doing your research in that way is definitely good. Just looking up, how much is a mobile phone plan going to cost? What's the cost of food? What's the cost of living? How much is minimum wage? What kind of job am I going to have? Just so you have a better idea of what your expenses are going to look like. Especially your startup costs. That's definitely something you want to know, because I gave myself about a year to save up, properly to kind of come out here. So, and I just worked out a budget plan while I was in Toronto. I said, okay, how much is my rent? How much is, I want a little bit of spending money to go out to enjoy myself as well. How much is my phone plan, food, all your basic costs, and then extra costs that you can kind of work with. And I just worked out a savings plan for a year, and no matter what, every time I got a paycheck, I just put however much I allocated into the bank, and it was like out of sight, out of mind. That is my London budget for when I go. And keeping that on track with that. And it's just important, you have to make some sacrifices before moving abroad in most cases. I mean, unless you're very lucky, but, for the average person, I think you do have to make sacrifices. So you're like, okay, is going out to the bar on a Friday, Saturday night with friends and buying drinks, if you miss one night, and that's going to get you to London or Australia or wherever you want to move to that much quicker. What's more important to you? Or can you give up your gym pass? Can you sell your TV? Can you sell your car? Just little things like that. Can you sell your clothes and just, that you don't normally wear? Downsize is huge. I definitely became quite a minimalist from moving abroad, and I came out here with just like a medium-sized suitcase, and I love that. It doesn't fit all in there anymore, but for a while, I literally everything I owned just fit into a suitcase, and that was just kind of a satisfying feeling, because you could just pick up and move easily in that sense. You can save a lot of money just by cutting such basic things out of your life that you don't even realize. Yeah, but it's crazy that how much stuff we collect, because I moved in both countries, Canada and New Zealand, with one suitcase. Yeah, so last time I moved from my previous place to here, I had like a van full of my stuff. Like, how did this happen?
I came here with a suitcase, and now I'm moving with a full van of stuff. You don't know. I just start collecting things, getting new stuff, because you kind of need to get settled in a new country. You kind of need your own comfort.
Of course.
And all of a sudden, you have like a van full of your stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we can acquire so easily. But then it's also amazing how much you realize you actually don't need, in life, and you can still be happy with just having minimal things.
Totally, I agree. Because everything you got, yes, it was a van full of stuff, but probably 90% was the things you need to live, like a bed or, I don't know, a desk or something like that. But if I have to move tomorrow, I know pretty much all I need is a suitcase and my bag with my computer stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly what I need.
Yeah.
Everything else is extra.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice feeling.
Totally, I agree 100%. If people get in touch with you, where people can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Wonderlush. So it's WANDERLUSH_Lori. And I also have a travel blog that I do as a hobby blog, just about traveling and living the expat life. And that's wonderlushtravel.com.
Awesome. Put everything you said, all the links we discussed in this episode on the show notes on immigrantslife.com. Awesome. Thank you very much for being on the show and share your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure was mine. Awesome. Thank you very much, Lori.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. You can find the show notes with all the links we discussed at immigrantslife.com/episode 20. Once again, immigrantslife.com/episode 20. If you're interested in how to get a phone number from a different country so you can start to apply for jobs beforehand, check the post I publish on our website. You can get a phone number for just a few dollars a month, or even for free if you have some computer skills. If you know of friends who want to go to the UK, share this episode with them. The goal of this podcast is to help people who want to emigrate with resources and a bit of motivation from people like Lori who already did it. On the other hand, if you are an immigrant yourself and want to share your story on the show, visit immigrantslife.com/yourstory. Thanks again for listening. Talk to you in the next one. Ciao!